And we're live. It's Modern Relics Podcast. We're doing it again. This is what,
Yeah.
8?
I think it's
8 or 9.
It's 8 or 9. Yeah,
we gotta
for
be.
sure.
Yeah, we gotta be coming up on the big episode 10, and that's where we're all going to turn into pumpkins. On
It is
episode 10.
October, so that makes sense.
It's true. Yeah, I'm exhausted, man. I'm feeling a little rowdy because I ate a delicious hot dog about a half an hour ago. Ready to take on the world now because I put on a little relish.
Was it beef?
It was, yeah. It's those Hebrew National all beef franks. They're like one of my favorites, but they're wildly overpriced. I was like, I'm gonna splurge. I mean, who pays like $6 for a package of hot dogs?
You do.
I did. This guy.
Yeah.
But I haven't been sleeping well because my neighbor's dog decides to howl at all hours of the day and night. And I mean, it's come to the point where I've gone over to their place twice and knocked on the door. Like, I'm a pretty approachable dude. Like, I'll make you a coffee. We can hang out, whatever. The first time they weren't home. The second time they pretended not to be. And it just goes on and on and on. 4 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, 10 at night. So I finally called the city because I don't have a homeowners association, so I can't like bring it up, you know, in committee. And they're like, yeah, fill out a form and we'll send somebody. And then if this continues, you have to make a record of each time the noisy pet wakes you up and all that stuff. So now I'm just like waking up and my phone does gestures, so I can like spin my finger on the phone and it'll open up and start recording kind of thing. So I just like hold the phone up in the air while my face is still under the covers and just like, I fucking hate this dog. And it's not the dog's fault. It's totally the owner's fault. Because it's like 110, dogs outside barking. 50 degrees, dogs outside barking. It doesn't matter. Like, how do you not hear it? You know what I mean? Like
And why do you have a dog?
Yeah, and I understand that like I work at home all the time and that's nobody's fault but my own, but I also shouldn't be made to celebrate the fact that you own a dog literally all the time. So I don't know what to do. So I'm making a log because the next step is, I guess, at my own expense to take them to some type of small claims situation, which I don't want to do. I just want the dog to be quiet.
Are these some of the neighbors that you like too?
No. All the neighbors I like are on my street. It's my bedroom faces the backyard and there's like a wall, and then anything that is not covered by the wall, it acts almost like a subwoofer box amplifier right at my window. And the dog is just down there yelling at the side of my house that I sleep on. So, but yeah, even a couple of my neighbors that I do like, when they were doing some remodels, had to sleep on my side of the house, which is still across the street from me. And they're like, we heard the damn dog once we were on your... I was like, see, I told you. So anyway, all that to say, I'm looking at getting a tiger. I'm just going to like put it over the fence and be like...
Seems like a reasonable solution.
Let nature take its course. I'm sure some shit will happen.
Yeah, no, that seems perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
So,
but no, I'm otherwise good. How are you? Besides neither one of us owning a tiger yet, which I understand is easier than it should be to get.
I had a lifelong dream of owning a liger and riding it to work. It has not been fulfilled. It is that we were talking about the bucket list last week. I forgot about that one. Outside of that, I've been really good.
Nice.
I've had a long work week, but it was a fulfilling work week. So that I did a lot of fun things and cool stuff. And I did have a situation where the other night we were in bed early. Normally I'm a in bed late kind of guy, but it was one of those nights where, other than Oliver downstairs playing video games, probably with you, we were all in bed, and we don't get visitors. The only visitors I get is a house full of teenagers every once in a while from my sister or my daughter's friends.
Yeah.
And so, but it's 11 o'clock at night. She's in bed. We're in bed. And I'm like, what? Our doorbell rings. And it was
at 11?
At 11:12.
Damn.
And I'm like, what is happening? So being the the toxic masculine man that I am, I get up and grab my gun and I go to the front door and I stand up at the top of the stairs. We have a split level, so I'm at the top of the stairs looking down and I flip on the light and the doorbell rings again. And I'm like, in my, I'm shirtless, holding a gun, no hat, I'm bald, just like, "Rrr." And I'm like, who's there? And, and this lady pokes her head around the window and goes, hi, and I can't hear her through the window, but she's like beckoning me to come down. And she looks like a normal lady, probably 40-ish, nothing crazy.
Probably a vampire.
But with the vampires in this area, and then also just the people that don't like my wife, for political reasons, we're always a little on the
that post-text
side.
Clarification.
Yeah,
people that don't like my wife for political reasons. Okay,
I think for political reasons. We're always on a little bit of high alert for that kind of stuff. So I'm like. But, my dogs are going crazy. They're actually barking. And, Kate comes out of her room, is like, who's at the door? And, the light's on and Oliver's like, what's going on? Headphones on still from playing video games. And the lady's looking at me and she beckons over and I was like, who are you? And she looks down and sees my Glock in my hand. And she looks at it, she goes, never mind, wrong house, and then bolts. And we're up for the next hour, kind of like
trying to figure out the aftermath. Yeah,
prowling back and forth, looking out the windows because her car's still out front. We're like, where did she go? Like, what is this all about? And turns out, at exactly 11:32, our right next door neighbors, the young couple who has 4 kids and as of 11:32 that night had their 5th kid.
Oh, wow.
In the house.
Okay.
That was their doula. That was their midwife. Yeah. So she was there to help birth the baby and was like rushing to get there in the dark at 11 o'clock at night. Probably had only been to the house one time. So I get a text from the neighbor going with a picture of the baby. And I was like, yeah, sorry that I pulled a gun on your midwife. And he's just like, yeah, I heard about that. Ha ha. He's like, no, she's cool. It's fine. But yeah, so that was a fun little story of me pulling the gun on a poor lady at 11 o'clock at night.
Well, I mean, you didn't draw down on her, did you?
Not at all.
Yeah. No, I think that's, I mean, given the circumstances, that's perfectly acceptable. I remember someone took a wrong turn and where my dad lives is like on the end of a dirt road on top, and if you go to a different turn, there's like a church camp, like a friend's church camp thing, like, oh, I'm looking for, but they showed up like, I mean, stereo blazing at like 1 a.m. or something, and my dad is just,
that's a bad idea to do on your dad's property.
Gun in one hand and like the little fig leaf covering on the other, like, who the hell is this? Probably left a lasting impression on those kids.
I'm sure he did.
It's acceptable. Yeah.
But other than that, no, had a good week. I decidedly wore my toxic masculinity shirt for the viewers since I promised last week.
I love it.
So I'm fairly certain my kids bought this for me because they just know me so well. But outside of that,
I gotta get one of those. My cool George Soros t-shirt's in the wash, so I couldn't wear it. Unfortunately, we'll have to wait.
Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to go around the horn with you really fast, dude. I read this today, and it excites me so because it's sort of like defending woke logic adjacent. This little excerpt takes us to Kansas, where I believe the mosquito is the Kansas state bird. Having been there.
Yes.
So Panasonic, the company, is setting to open a $4 billion electric vehicle battery factory. And that's going to require a nearby coal-fired power plant to not only stay open, but upgrade at least 3 substations and then build 2 more substations on top of that. Because All of that wrapped up, the energy demands that are projected of this battery factory, which did plan to transition the coal plant, the coal plant out to natural gas, completely put on hold because they have to rush to build this thing. And you wonder, like, it's the irony in that I find super ironic. You can imagine the environmentalists are furious about this, but the best part is, like, well, what's Panasonic think about this? So meanwhile, Panasonic could gain as much as $8 billion in tax credits under the Biden's new Inflation Reduction Act, with a focus on like the EVs and alternative energies and stuff, just as a result of opening the factory. Panasonic's not an American company, by the way. So just as an aside, so a $4 billion electric vehicle battery factory in Kansas, because, bring it here to America, open up jobs. It's not where all these subsidies are going to end up in the pockets of, just by the way. But not only do they have to leave the coal plant open, they cannot change it to natural gas. They now have to fix 3 substations to help bolster the power of this, which they said was between 200 and 250 megawatts, which was enough to power a small city. But then they also have to build two more substations on top of that, just to get this thing fired up. And I think that's hilarious.
I'm at a loss for words.
It's worse for the economy to do this, and they're gonna.
Other than I never realized until now how exhausted I am at being smug all the time.
Yeah.
Like having this smug feeling like I effing told you so.
Yeah.
For like 4 solid years is getting to the point where it's tiring. It's almost like, we were told that we're never going to get tired of winning. We're not winning, but we're always right. And
we're definitely not winning. Yeah.
Yeah. So
did I share with you the soapbox I went on with the car club about the electric vehicle stuff the other day?
No.
So
this ought to be good.
Well, they were like, all of us are fairly against the idea of an electric vehicle, and nobody really found quality reasons to articulate why that was, other than it just doesn't resonate. It just doesn't resonate with car enthusiasts like us. And I was like, well, here I am. I was like, they were bitching about the car industry and who's holding out on building gasoline powered vehicles versus who's transitioning to EVs, and like the last great holdouts and Toyota and Nissan and whatever. And I was like, nobody in the car industry wants to abandon internal combustion engines. Nobody. Like, they've refined this technology for decades, and it costs a lot of money to change out the equipment necessary to automate it, to have the automated assembly lines to build net new stuff. That's why when cars come out with the all new design, they're usually just iterations of the last one, or they partner with other companies to do it because it costs a lot of money. And you're betting on if someone will buy it. But nobody in the car industry wants to abandon internal combustion. Their PR teams have to craft the speeches and narratives because governments, particularly ours, are hyping up the whole sky is falling because of global warming stuff. So they impose these rules on automakers to transition to electric vehicles and simultaneously diminish the investment in the electrical grid by which they'll be sold into. It does not sustain, and oddly, the same governments refuse to invest in literally any other alternative for propulsion systems. My example is California banning all gas cars by basically tomorrow. One of the Gavin Newsom things. And then a week later asking their citizens not to plug in their cars if they own EVs because of the rolling brownouts in Southern California. Meanwhile, the consumers are being fed a line of shit that the market wants these cars, and that's where the market's headed. And for those of you that are green energy first, I would love for you to calculate how much diesel fuel is spent using the equipment to strip mine planet Earth of all the rare earth minerals it takes to create the batteries, then send them to Canada for refinement, then send them to Japan for packaging and installment into new cars, to then be exported back to the United States and sold over commercial marine traffic, burning even more fuel. So explain to me how we're saving the earth with which expense on the line. The cars are not going to save us from climate change. I think it would be a good start to not burn millions of acres of tires in places like India. Maybe we'll try that first and see where that goes. Then there was a few rebuttals that were like, yeah, that's pretty awesome, but what about the oil reserves? And I was like, yeah, someone tried to tell me the other day that oil reserves will expire, and I promise you in our lifetime, the oil age will not end because of a shortage of fossil fuels, just like the Stone Age did not end because we ran out of stones. It's market manipulation with a fuckload of money behind it, and it always has been. So...
yeah, no, that's precisely right. And actually, there's many articles now from a lot of people with geological and scientific backgrounds that are coming out that where they would tap dry an oil reserve and have to move on. They come back 2 years later, and it's flush again. It's full.
Right.
So they're realizing that fossil fuels actually aren't fossil fuels.
Right.
It's entirely something else. It's some other carbon-based liquid that's coming up from the core, wherever it's coming from. They're not quite sure, but it regenerates, and it does it everywhere. So the Sinclair gas stations with the big green dinosaur in front, that's not a thing. And they have come to realize that, but they're so deep into the science of this that they can't really put the brakes on it and put it in reverse right now. It'll take 30, 40 years, much as it does for any other type of science, to get through a curriculum in a high school before they realize, oh, that was actually, we knew that wasn't a thing 30 years ago. But unfortunately, it costs too much to update the books and stuff like that. So,
well, I mean, my thing is like, I would love to drive a nuclear powered car. Could you imagine going to the gas station 0 times for the rest of your life? Like,
yeah, it's called Back to the Future. That was awesome.
Yeah. We all want the continuum transfunctioner. No, like for real
capacitor, my friend.
Yeah. What was continuum transfunctioner from? Was that like Coneheads or something?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
transfunctioner.
Yes,
I can hear it in my head. Yeah.
Yeah. But remember
flux capacitor. That's right.
Yeah. At the end of the first one, you know, he had a 1980s like food processor.
That's right.
Garbage in it. Yeah.
It's like the modern day Ninja blender was just chilling on the back of the DeLorean. But like my point is, we are within a handful of years of making stuff like that actually happen, where it's not like, oh, but you know, the fallout and oh my God. And like, we're not processing plutonium to create a fission or a fusion bomb. Like it's the fallout necessary from the half-life in order to power circuitry to like a little bit different. Now I realize you'll get your dissenters, like you'll get the people that will make crazy shit out of it, and like there's risks. And but is it just a natural health concern to have a nuclear powered car? No, I'm sure they will make plenty of safety regulations and things around that, but it is possible. We're just not even trying. It's just this drive toward electric everything, and it's like that's going to consume and tax and overtax infrastructure that you continue to refuse to invest in to begin with. Like,
yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that like with specifically nuclear powered vehicles of any kind, unfortunately right now the accessibility and the expense to the materials needed to do that are all controlled by the government.
Yeah.
So like your average Joe can't get a hold of it. However, the last 3 guys.
You mean I can't DoorDash some plutonium and uranium?
That would be wonderful. But
it's a Geiger counter at the door waiting for the guy to show up in a hazmat suit. Yeah.
Yeah. But the last 3 guys that succeeded in creating vehicles that ran strictly on water, were all killed.
Mm-hmm.
So even if the accessibility was there, that's not the direction that the powers that be that, you know, that own the World Economic Forum and all of the environmental programs want us to go anyway. They want us to go and do these.
Got to find my
electric
George
cars.
Soros shirt. I swear to God.
Yeah.
No,
Right?
you're right. And like most, what I understand, and this could be false, but my understanding is such that some of the patents on alternative energies, I'm not just going to finger point one or the other because it could be nuclear, could be whatever. I'm not sure.
Right.
But my understanding is that most of those patents are held by the oil companies.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, even if somebody, you and I got together in a Skunk Works project in a garage as a startup company. Yeah.
Either oil companies or environmental companies.
Right.
Well, oftentimes it's the environmental companies. The oil companies are like, we're solid.
Right.
Everything runs on our product. The entire world runs on our product. Shipping stops unless we have our product.
Correct.
They don't really see an advancement in any of these other industries that is even a threat to them at this point. So them owning these patents isn't really even, they're not the big bad guys. Who the big bad guys are the energy. And,
it's the people bottling the oil.
Environmentalists.
And the environmentalists, yeah.
Yeah, so these people who are like, no, we need to steer this entire ship towards the stuff that's going to make us money, which is electric cars, which is wind factories, which is, all the solar blanketing of entire like multi-acre,
when you come down here, I will show you some of the solar farms that are built on the BLM property out here.
Oh yeah,
it's staggering. And that's Bureau of Land Management that I'm referring to.
And they're unmanageable due to the fact that one hailstorm comes through and it just wrecks them all.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's useless and you're out of power.
It's another $20,000 to $50,000 per panel for replacement.
Yeah, we're actually fighting. They're talking about trying to put wind farms in Kootenai County right now. And dude, the people are lighting the torches as we speak. They're
and
you're not doing that here.
I'm not against electric car as a consumer option.
Right.
But it being a consumer alternative at the behest of logic, generally speaking, and one-sided commerce, like practices,
being forced into anything is bullshit. Never a good thing.
Yeah. So I don't know. So I started looking at like who has all the money, who's making the decisions, who are the they when we refer to they've got all the whatever.
Right.
So BlackRock and Vanguard
always
own a lot of stuff. Like
yeah, they do.
Like this leads me to my collective math problem. So I started working on like trying to figure out when you throw around millions, billions, trillions, I don't think it really sinks in. So I'm just going to ask you a static question. How long is 1 million seconds? Just 1 million seconds. What does that equate to on another? Give me in days, hours.
Okay.
How many hours do you think that is?
1 million seconds.
How many eons do you think it is? Yeah, 1 million seconds. How long a span of time is that?
I'm going to say,
wrong answers gladly accepted. It's just what's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say
6 days.
It's not bad. It's 12 days.
Oh wow.
12 days.
Double what I So
how long is a trillion seconds?
If a billion seconds is 12 days.
No, 1 million seconds is.
Oh, 1 million seconds.
1 million seconds is 12 days.
Man, if it's only a million and that's 12 days and a trillion seconds, let's say 30 years?
Close.
Oh, dang.
31,000 years.
Yeah, I was right there, man. That was a price.
You missed the decimal point a handful of skips.
Yeah.
Throw in a few leap years. It's 31,000 years. So when people throw trillion at you and you're like, that's got to be hyperbolic, it almost always is, because a million seconds is 12 days and a trillion seconds is 31,000 years. BlackRock owns assets under management $9.42 trillion under management. That beats every single country's
GDP.
Gross domestic product by a landslide, with the exception of two countries, America and China.
China. Yep. Wow.
So
wow.
That's
has
likely the
GDP of most countries.
Do you know when BlackRock was founded? You've got to think the 1700s at the rate of growth they've seen, right?
I'm going to guess the late 90s.
Late 80s, yeah.
Late 80s. Yeah. Wow. Oh, man.
I am older than BlackRock, and they own all of the world's economies minus like dwarf them as far as like assets under management, except with the exception of the United States and China. So then I started digging into like, what is it that they own and at what percentage? And that took me down a whole bunch of statistics that I need not repeat here in the podcast. Go Google it. It's pretty, the infographics are fun. Like, here's the healthcare sector. Here's consumer discretionary. And I mean, Amazon's
real
in there.
Estate. Yeah, real estate.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. The majority in Berkshire Hathaway. Oh God, they're everywhere. So that is likely the they, when you look at like the consolidation of the defense contract area into like the five major players, right? You have like Raytheon and Northrop Grumman and like that whole arena of stuff.
Right.
Principally owned by BlackRock and Vanguard.
Also, probably all the alphabet groups, and such as like Google. And
big,
all of the social media.
Big shareholders in all of them. Yeah, and big media too. They also Visa, also MasterCard,
Viacom, all of the big Disney, all of it.
Merck, the healthcare, and pharmaceutical company. Like, so when you think about like where these narratives could be when it comes to like defense spending or big media or little media or search engine or conglomerate, residual conglomerate ending in cell phone company, it's all pointing back to like three major players. And the third one escapes me because I was really augured in on the BlackRock, but BlackRock, Vanguard, and there's the third one. But
I was watching something. The third one is always the last one to get brought up, but they're just as bad as the rest. But I think they tend to be more European and Asian focused.
Yeah.
So that's why they kind of get put at the end of the list. But you're right. There's three of them.
But fun thought experiment, right? Like 1 million seconds is 12 days. A trillion is 31,000 years.
That's mind-blowing.
And so when people use stuff like that, where they're like, well, we're just going to take a chemical-powered rocket to a different planet and terraform it. And if the theory of relativity is the beginning and the ending point for all things that we can base everything we know off of from a physics perspective, that means the speed of light is as fast as somebody could go. So if we can get an object at the speed of light at top speed, it's only going to take us 10,000 years. Wow, dude. Like, that's what all of Jewish history is 8,000, something like that. Seriously.
Well, at that point, there's no other place for my brain to go other than, well, that's a waste of money.
It's a waste of money.
That's a waste of time.
And that's the whole thing. Like, I was listening to Eric Weinstein, Brett Weinstein's brother. And he's got this whole theory that's like the theory of everything that I'm trying to poke holes in because I have a very rudimentary knowledge of this. It's fascinating to me, but I'm not good at it. Anyway, he was like, his response to that was like when people are like, oh yeah, we're just going to fucking speed a light it out of here and go to this next planet. We have to leave the solar system. And he's just like, how are we going to get there? And, oh, we're going to use wormholes. Oh, we're going to use time dilation. He's like, yeah, dude. And we're going to bring nunchucks and throwing stars and it's going to be fucking awesome. Like, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. But what is known is that's a big piece of time to like articulate the point with how much assets under management BlackRock happens to own. And that's a scary endeavor. Like, I mean, just in this country, we have things against monopolies. Like, Microsoft buying Blizzard might not go through because then they'll dominate the gaming industry and blah, blah, blah.
But yet these three companies are completely exempt from those laws. Why is that?
Full speeding ahead, And so I'm going to probably do a lot more homework, because is there a point to all this? Not really, other than when I'm looking at the they, that's like the world driving,
Right.
power change players and stuff. It is all kind of funneling back to these big organizations,
Which
like
is also
Vanguard and
why all
BlackRock.
the ESG stuff is coming from them. So all of the stuff where these companies are choosing to do very obvious ad campaigns that are obviously not
Right.
good for their brand, but they're required to do them is because they're getting money on the back end saying, I know you'll hit a small dip because
Mhm.
you'll get the protesters, but the ESG money for going along with this program that we have
Right.
through BlackRock and Vanguard, we will then supplement that so you don't have to worry about going bankrupt and ride the wave and get through it. And on the other end, we'll all be societally better for our value system for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And
So ESG is like, it's a framework. It's a business framework that is principally used to assess an organization's business practices and their performance and their risk against sustainability and ethical issues. Like, it's a social currency construct, and it is the brainchild of Larry Fink. At least he's the one propagating that I started this thing. And I don't know, maybe Al Gore invented the internet after all.
And explain to people who Larry Fink is.
Larry Fink's the CEO of BlackRock.
Right.
And his net worth is massive, but he is,
Lex Luthor.
He's sort of like this. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. He's sort of like this. I'm a society, like open social society first type of archetype, like almost thinks of himself as a demigod for the people kind of thing. Raised a shitload of money in investing, and it just was like this spiral out of control that later became BlackRock. He wrote an open letter to...
He's a full-blown Marxist too, by the way.
Yeah, he wrote an open letter to, which is antithetical just in the statement. Like, creating all of what you are off of a capitalist program to profess your undying Marxism is...
Well, that's the thing, is that it's Marxist for you, not for us. We're the ones who are implementing Marxism.
Right. Take Panasonic's tax cuts against, all the American tax cuts they'll get for building a battery factory and stuff. Well, exactly. You guys are going to end up paying for that. Your energy prices in Kansas are likely going to go up as a result of this. Just heads up.
We created it. You pay for it.
Right.
That's how that works.
Well, so he wrote an open letter to a lot of like business owners and stuff, like inviting the idea that this ESG, the social currency, is going to be twofold. Number one, it's going to help you join the movement of making a more sustainable future and giving a shit about the frameworks around things like diversity and inclusion and other such things. And then they'll devise some sort of rating system for you based on the public information that you're putting out there. And then they'll also highlight where you're deficient so that you can look at that as a risk vector. And the underbelly of that from the marketing side of it is, as we ingratiate more and more generations into this ideology of sustainability and how great it is and how amazing it's going to be, along with, saving the environment, all the social shit that's going on and whatever, you can market as such, and people are going to want to buy your brand because you're taking part of this social currency system that we're essentially creating. And so that's where the marketing piece of that sort of comes into play, at least where we can tangibly see it starting to make effect.
And it's packaged perfectly for people who will benefit from it, not realizing that there's going to be negatives, like not just negatives, resounding society shaking negatives. I mean, it's quite literally, we are living within a Black Mirror episode, and people don't want to even accept the fact that a social credit score through business or otherwise, which will leak from businesses into personal spectrums, as it has in China and other areas of the world already. And even in Europe, they're already starting to implement it and implementing smart cities, which is an attachment to this.
Right. Which we covered on like episode 2, I think.
Right. So we actually just had a symposium here because we're about ready to chop down another 5G tower that they're trying to put up on 15th, and like a whole bunch of other stuff. Like there, but anyway, I could go on about that. But one of the things that it really does is it creates a social class system that no matter how clean you think you are, it is required to find the bad things about you. And because in order for them to even justify the system, they have to keep you at a negative balance or moving, fluctuating, unless you've been selected to be a prime example. So it creates a class system that I thought as a society that we were supposed to be going against. Right. And I obviously come from a very meritocracy type of mindset. So it doesn't make any sense to me to create a system that, like, for instance, you said something mean on a social media site that went against the Borg, and the Borg has now doxed you. You can no longer fly for 3 months. You can no longer, and people who are friends with you will get doxed as well, or docked, not doxed, but docked as well. And so, and
I was going to say, it's a big
ripple effect.
Yeah,
the ripple effect is like, it's not just you or the bad person, it's any of their family members. Yeah. Oh, you have to ostracize them. You have to move yourself away from that person, friend or foe or family. It doesn't matter. They will go, oh, you liked a bunch of their posts earlier. Right. Therefore, you're now getting docked too. So, people will be like, oh, the minute they get blacklisted, they're gone. Right, that person then becomes an island.
It's the one unshakable human trait on the pride and the social acceptability front, because we're social creatures intrinsically. People don't want diminished, and they think that that's just the worst kind of hell in today's digital world. And to be honest with you, the tangible examples of what we see are pure silliness. Like, we went from plastic straws and paper wrappers to paper straws and plastic wrappers. Like, and we're calling this progression and change. And I do think if there's a silver lining to be had, I do think that it's awesome that we live in a time where we have to seek out problems to bitch about and create social currencies and constructs off of, because things are actually doing that good based on where human health and wealth was even 100 years ago up to now. Like, it's been absolutely incredible. So if you could take some pride in the fact that, like, we're actually doing pretty fucking good for all things considered, you could kind of chuckle at it, but the design behind this is driving towards something that's a lot more pernicious, in my opinion. Yeah. And I haven't really put the notes and the thoughts together to articulate that now, but I will. I mean, we got time to go through it, but you're absolutely right. And I don't know, I looked at that and I was like, trillion's big, and I don't think people understand how fucking big trillion is. So I'm gonna play a little math game. Give me some timelines. So that's a lot. That's a ton. That's more than a ton. That's a lot of money. Anyway, we wanted to talk about fun stuff. So that's it for Around the Horn for me. Anyway, off my hot dog riddled fury warpath of excitement.
I thought that was fun.
Yeah, like, so next time somebody says, "Oh, trillion," you can actually kind of take a step back and be like, how hyperbolic is the story I'm hearing, or how real is the story I'm hearing? That's a lot more than people think when you just use the word. And anyway, food for thought. Maybe it's not as revolutionary to those of you listening, but I was just like, let me find a way to contextualize this.
Yeah, that's wild.
So we saw some movies. You saw some movies. You saw a lot of movies this week.
I did. Did you see any?
No, I didn't. I've been on the content barge, so I haven't really watched television or movies. I started to rewatch Dune, the new one.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. They pushed the second one back, and it makes me mad.
Writer's strike. This is the second time they pushed it back.
I know.
December, I think, right? Is when it's coming out.
Hopefully.
Anyway, I'm about halfway through it. It's like my third rewatch. It's super fun. I think the casting is great. But perfect anyway, casting. Big Short. I want to hear about this because I watched this last week. I turned you onto this, right?
Yeah,
we talked about it on the pod last week. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't watch it that night like I had promised, but I did watch it the following night.
Yeah.
And um you're right. It was not only just wildly entertaining because of the way it was shot and the way it was cut and the
Yeah.
way that they brought in these other people to kind of explain um, relatively complicated issues and break it down for people so that they could actually.
Weren't those cutscenes fun when they just shot to like
great.
Selena Gomez and shot to this? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was perfect. They did a really good job with it, and obviously the cast was incredible. And it basically just kind of reaffirmed all of the things I kind of knew about the 2008, but then added a whole bunch of context to it that I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know who any of these characters were, and the fact that they had through the math of trillions actually predicted people who understood what a trillion looked like and what that kind of number looked like. They actually predicted years in advance that this was going to happen and actually bet against it, which had never been done before in the history of the stock markets. And
to say that was ludicrous would be comically understated, to bet against housing in the stock market in 2006 and 7 heading into 2008. That would have been thrown. You'd have been burned at the stake by any conventional
and they almost
wisdom.
were all those guys that were all different pockets and it was mainly two dudes with the one of them having a team and then a couple of subgroups that all kind of caught onto this through word of mouth or on their own volition. And they were all the ones who were kind of like essentially, and it was a kind of a moral quandary because you're rooting for these guys, but at the same time, these guys are the ones who are banking on a absolute
if America fails
collapse,
then they win, right?
And you're constantly being checked morally in that because these guys you feel bad for them because you actually they did a really good job of making them likable, and you're like, no, these guys are the right ones, and at the same time you're like, yeah, but they're trying to make a ton of money off of the failure of America, so they're actually not the good guys.
Well, and oddly,
in a weird way.
And oddly, like a personal example of living through that where I started to see some signs was kind of like people that I knew where it's like, you bought a house? Like, how the fuck did you get a house? Yeah. And if you remember, you remember that spot I lived on in Arbor Heights in West Seattle, that house that Youngin moved into when I left? It was on 32nd and 32nd. So when we rented that, we had a rental agreement from people that financed that house through Countrywide Home Loans, one of the biggest offenders in the 2008 drop. And that was their fourth house. So when they lost that and it was like repossessed, we had people from the bank that had handed the note of the house over to a management firm to come ascertain the assets, and came and talked to me, and they're like, hey, you can't squat here. And I'm like, the fuck are you talking about? Here's my rental agreement. Yeah. And they were like, oh shit. Like, yeah. So it was and I was just like, oh God. And that was in that time, like tangibly watching. I was part of that where I was just like, holy shit. Like,
the ripple effect that went down to renters even during that. Because it wasn't just people getting screwed out of home loans who shouldn't have had them anyway, and multiple home loans at a time.
They had like 4 properties and they weren't making payments on any of them. And we were paying rent. Exactly. That's a scene in the movie. Why did my landlord not pay the bill or whatever? And he's holding his kid. Yeah, I was that guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then, they're going around asking all of these people, like, how did you get a house? I had a ton of friends during that time frame who all did the same thing. They bought houses because, man, they were just giving those loans away.
Yeah, they were giving them away, literally.
I wasn't in a position to be buying a house at that point, and it was probably for the best.
Yep.
I was some of us who were old enough to be in the housing market at the time, who accidentally dodged a bullet in that regard, but so many people didn't. So many people were duped into that situation. But what was the kicker for me was at the end of the movie. And this movie was made in 2015. And so at the end of the movie, it kind of gives you, as movies do, like where they are now in life, these real life characters and what they're doing. and the guy who's played by Batman,
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who's played by Christian Bale, who was the one who
I almost said Val Kilmer just to fuck with you, but go ahead.
George Clooney.
Yeah, that's right.
He was actually the one that came to the realization first before anybody else did the autism math and just like realized what was coming down the pike, and actually was like the one who pissed off the most people, all of his investors and everything, because he dumped most of their money, I think somewhere in the realm of $1.3 billion into against the housing market. And but he did it really early and he sat on it, and he did it years in advance, and that was something that people were not happy about. But because he saw the writing on the wall and the math way in advance, that's why he did it. And at the end of the movie, it literally says in 2015 he's since gotten out of that market and out of the investing firms, and now has invested every last dollar into one asset. Do you remember what that asset is?
Water.
And that's terrifying. That guy, who's basically the Nostradamus of economic crashes, is like, yeah, I'm putting all my money into water.
Yeah, and I think so, it was easier to pick apart because I started working a little bit with Wall Street around the same time. I worked with redacted investment firm for a while and started learning the ropes to try and work my way toward a Series 7. And it was very easy to see when you start packaging those bonds together that were made just unilaterally rated as AAA rated bonds, when they were packaged with like C+ and D+ assets underneath it. And then they were underwritten by, pawnbrokers. You had Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that were sort of larger, mid-tier echelon underwriters. And then you had like Countrywide Home Loans that were basically just popping up out of the woodwork to get the notes on these things. It was very easy to see there's nothing underneath this. But I was already in it while it was happening in order to see that decline, like in firsthand. So I got to live through this is going to be written about forever in investment 101 for credit default swaps and stuff like that. But the best part that they didn't really cover, at least not to a big degree, and I think it was maybe politically motivated, was the blank check that the United States government wrote them to bail them out with absolutely zero rules behind paying it back. And I was like, when I saw that happen, I was like, oh wow, they're just going to bonus themselves and fucking fuck off, and they're just going to start over again. It's exactly what they did. It's like, sick. Who was president in 08? That was Obama, right?
Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
It was that guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, not to twist the political knife, but it was like, this happens routinely.
The policy that was made by a particular administration, the Obama administration, that allowed for this to happen. In fact, it was the Obama administration's policy that opened up all of those. It took away all of the restrictions and advanced all of the openings for anyone and everyone to get a loan for a house for any reason at all. My mom was a real estate agent during that time frame, and she was just like, this is insane. This kid works at McDonald's and he has 2 houses. Like, how is that a thing? And and she got out in 07 because she saw the writing on the wall. She goes, this isn't sustainable. I don't understand what they're doing. This is all gonna pop. And she said the guys that had been doing real estate for 30, 40 years that she worked with were like, this isn't going to go well. We're all going to, and
I think when it was like, when you could see that the Titanic was barreling toward the iceberg, there was a lot of like, oh shit moments where people were like, pull out, get out of there. And then that just amplified the crash on the Wall Street side of things even worse. And then the movie articulated the banks kind of being behind it. Well, how much are you involved? Well, that's everything, WAMU's gone, and all these massive big firms and stuff that were not just in Washington State, but very tense subject matter, especially for guys like you and I that lived through it. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, thankfully we didn't have money tied up in that we became real big losers. Obviously I was a renter. I landed on my feet and found somewhere else to rent. But yeah, kind of tricky subject matter, but super fucking good movie, I thought.
Yeah, great movie. I was thoroughly entertained by a movie on a very, very typically boring subject
Right.
matter.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like it should not have kept my
Right.
fascination. But
I think that's why I put it off so long. Is I was like, there's no ninjas, there's no explosions, there's
right. I had no interest in it at all. I was
Yeah.
like, The Big Short, who
Right.
cares? And then but then I hit the ripe old age of 45 where that stuff really matters.
Mhm.
And so I was like, oh, this is fascinating. And so I was up pretty late, like just completely riveted by that movie. And then it actually had a quote at the end that I have now put into my regular lexicon, and it was a quote that they put at the bottom. Said "heard in a bar in Washington D.C." and it says says that people the truth is like poetry, and most people fucking hate poetry.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's genius. That's a beautiful quote. And because it's true. Even if they're pretending to like poetry, right, most people hate it. So
oh my God. Yeah. And the lengths we go to, especially when you're trying to gain the affections of somebody else. Imagine like picking up on a girl at a bar back when you had to do that kind of thing. And
it's been a while.
Just the shit that you try to find relational interest in just to seem engaged enough in the conversation to help the conversation along. You know, like I remember, and someone did a skit on this too, I think, but I remember I was talking to some girl that was like, yeah, I'm really into Wicca. And I was like, wow, what's that? You know, it's like, oh, it's kind of like this new agey witchcraft stuff. Like, imagine if I said some shit like that. Yeah, I'm a wizard.
Totally a wizard. Fourth lever wizard.
Yeah, no, the truth is like poetry, and who gives a fuck about poetry?
Yeah. It was a beautiful quote.
Oh man! All right, so Big Short, two thumbs up from me.
2 thumbs up. I fully enjoy it. I think I recommend it highly. Out of a solid 10 stars, I would give it probably 7.5 to 8.
Yeah, that's about where I'm at.
But yeah, it was great. Highly recommend. The next movie, though, is if we're over here talking about the related topics of an economic crisis mixed with phenomenal acting and storytelling and pacing of a film. Over here, we have the Meg 2.
Yeah, sure.
And I endured the Meg 2 for the watching audience here. We saw the Meg as a family because it's Jason Statham and sharks. I mean, I'm not going to say no to Jason Statham.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Snakes on a Plane because it's Sam Jackson and Snakes and a Plane.
So we saw that in the theater, but Meg 2 came out and none of us even brought up going to see it or wanted to see it. So like, that's how good the Meg 1 was. It was so preposterous and over the top. And I think it's meant to be because I believe that there's, and I haven't really looked into this, it just feels that way, that I think that there's a heavy Chinese studio element in it, because it feels like a Chinese film, just like the over the top kind of exaggerated everything. Yeah. And
like from a like choreography and camera perspective, you mean?
Yeah, well, that and color work.
Okay,
and like, and then like even the acting is kind of done in that way.
Yeah, it's very fantastical, like Crouching Tiger type of movie without
the elegance.
Yeah,
you know, like kind of one of the newer, flashier. It's basically, I know it's Korean, but it's like K-pop as an action film.
Sure,
it's got kind of like this weird kind of energy to it that is very distinct to newer Chinese action filmmaking. And So I think it's a collaboration of two different, American and Chinese studios, probably obviously to make a ton of money over in China because half the cast is also Chinese.
Oh, okay.
So, and so that being said, it is the next a couple years later, and it was insanity layered with preposterous nonsense, and layered with ridiculous, unbelievable stunts, layered with bad CGI, layered with bad acting. But I was glued.
Yeah.
Completely glued. Awful movie, but I could not stop watching because it wasn't train wreck. In its awfulness, it was entertaining.
Yeah.
And because I was just like, I just have to flip the switch and go. And just like, I can't think about a single thing in this movie. There's just nothing that like I'm
nice.
But it was, now there's like 4 megs and they're bigger than the other one. And on top of that, there's also because they go down into the trench, the Mariana Trench,
mm-hmm.
and they go way down, and there's a facility that they're doing down there. And then there's another group that attacks them while they're down there, like a like spy group or some kind. I don't know. I wasn't really tracking why they were doing what they were doing. But then they were being
plot points were progressed. Some shit happened. We're underwater. Right. Astute observation. CMC funded most of that film. China Media Group. By the way.
Did it really?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yep. See, that's what it felt like. So, but giant octopus.
Yes,
gets to be a part of this, and then, but I mean, it's. The climax of it is at this island because they're trying to get to this island after they get out from the bottom of the ocean very quickly, faster than you should.
Faster than you should reach surface from that depth.
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha.
And of course they have special suits that allow you to do that.
You can explain it away with the one bit that does the thing in a bullet point. Yeah.
What was really funny is that there's a part. They're literally at the like 26,000 meters below surface, like lower than anyone's ever been in the Mariana Trench, right? And they're in their facility down there, and yet Jason Statham has to swim out, go through the airlock and swim out and go around to get to the other airlock so he can unlock their door from the other side. So like right?
Conventional wisdom says he would be crushed like a grape.
Exactly. Yeah. However, they explain it, and they explain it very easily because they go, isn't he going to get he's going to get crushed. And they're like, oh no, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Insert the defeating of modern logic with
He literally goes, no, I just have to
device.
Blow out. I'll have to blow out my sinuses.
Yeah, we'll just duct tape this to the MacGuffin and send his ass out the fucking torpedo tube.
And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm just gonna keep watching this. Because he literally just had to blow out his sinuses and have his nose bleed. Yeah. And then it was fine. He could walk on the bottom of the ocean, no problem. And like he swam around and saved the day
with Kleenex
again.
Brand Kleenex. I'm basically Aquaman. Like, yeah.
Right. But so then the climax ends up at this island, right? And it's literally it's like a resort island, but it's called Fun Island.
Oh, sick.
And
I want to go to Fun Island.
Terrorists, 3 megs, a giant octopus, and a bunch of crappy tourists that are just getting wiped out, and then Jason Statham with spear bombs on a jet ski, like having them chase him and jumping over him and into their mouths and boom, and like all the while a 14-year-old girl is constantly getting herself into trouble running around doing crazy nonsense. I would say 4 out of 10 stars.
Nice.
Do not recommend unless you are willing to, unless you just want explosions, big sharks, and Jason Statham giving the side eye look. Like
we need a definitive scale for when we rate these things. I think we should give it 4 out of 10 sharks. Do you think?
Oh yeah, No, 4 out of 10 sharks.
4 out of 10
I agree.
sharks. Another one that's not as switch off your head that you might find fun. I certainly did. It wasn't like a big thinker, but it was very well acted and lots of fun and high energy. Was called Bullet Train. I don't know if you saw that.
Loved it.
Yeah, that was
Loved
fucking
Bullet
great,
Train.
dude.
Great movie. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those people who one of my guilty pleasures is strangely Brad Pitt movies.
Sure.
There isn't anything that guy's been in that I haven't enjoyed it.
Interview with the Vampire wasn't a big hit for me.
Yeah. Well, you don't like horror movies.
It wasn't a
For the
horror
most
movie.
part.
It was an Anne Rice book, which is kind of like a horror movie
But just in a different way.
in a different way. Yeah, like I thought Tom Cruise's acting in that film was fucking awesome because he was a savage, but it didn't resonate. And I'm cool with the vampire stuff. Like I like Blade and all the whatever. Like, bring it on, Morbius. Sure, let's watch that. Whatever.
Yeah, as far as like your distaste for horror genre in general, vampire stuff tends to be on that end of the spectrum that you can actually enjoy and tolerate from time to time, depending on
like if a boomstick is involved, like slasher film type of thing, I can get down with that. But specifically when it touches on like very deep psychological thriller stuff, things that I'll think about over and over again, which is I'm the audience they're looking for, or stuff that touches on like religious points and stuff like demons and shit like that. Like, I am out, dude. So quick story, my big horror film story. This is a true story. Friends of mine and I decided to go out to the Spokane Valley. That's how far back this was. And we watched the midnight showing early release of The Ring, which I guess by horror movie standards, for all intents and purposes, is kind of campy and stupid. People don't think of that as like, it's an amazing, but at the time it was like, whatever.
Yeah, it was pretty cutting edge at the time.
I left that theater shaking. Like, I don't know who the fuck let somebody out of the institution long enough to write that script, but like that person needs Jesus. I don't know what's going on here.
The person who wrote it was Japanese because it was a remake of Ringu.
Right. Yeah. Which I later learned. So I go home, roommates out in Bonners Ferry visiting family. The television is on. The cable is out. So I walk into a static TV. Now, to this day, I don't know if he set it up because he knew that was a principal element of the film or whatever. All the lights in the apartment go on. I'm just not going to sleep. It's just not going to happen for me. So I call my sister a million times. It's fucking 3 a.m. Like, hey, what are you doing? You want to come over? Do you want to drink a beer? What are you doing? So I look through the DVD wall because we had a tower with DVDs inserted into it. And the only one I hadn't seen, I'm like, got to take my mind off this film, was a movie called The Bone Collector. So I watched The Bone Collector immediately after The Ring. I don't think I slept for like a day and a half, 2 days. I'm leery about cabs still to this day. I don't want to get into a cab. I'm not trying to have some crazy character get me through a VHS tape, crawling out of the screen and eating my soul and shit. I get it. I'm a wiener. I don't do horror films, but yeah, that was how much I don't like horror movies. Yeah.
I have a long-standing tradition of, for the entire month of October, I watch a horror movie a night.
Oh, Jesus.
It's just something I do.
You just can't get enough.
And I try to mix it up where I will watch a classic and then something new. And so I don't watch horror. I try not to, unless it's a special occasion, but I try not to watch any horror movies throughout the year to save up enough material.
Yeah, because you need 30 days of madness.
Right. So, and one of those is exactly the type of movie that you are speaking of, that I watched the night before last. And it was phenomenal. However, I do not recommend it to you specifically because it is exactly what would keep you up. Yeah. And it's a movie called Barbarian. And it came out, I think, in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. And it is beautifully shot. It was a gorgeous movie. And it stars Georgiana Campbell and Bill Sarsgaard.
I love Bill Sarsgaard. But
Right.
he is drawn to films like this for sure.
Yes, he is. And Justin Long, and then a lot of other kind of
Yeah.
no names. But so essentially,
How
the
dare you,
story
Richard Brake plays
break.
Frank. How dare you?
He's actually in a lot of movies like Doom and stuff like that. He plays a creepy guy all the time. So, but that being said, this movie was uh, beautifully rendered. It was a gorgeous, gorgeous film. The tension building was phenomenal. The writing was incredible. It really led you along a path of getting to know the characters. Character building was really great.
Nice.
Unusual for a 2-hour horror movie. They kind of just throw you into this archetype, this archetype of person.
Right. Yeah.
And you just accept it and move along until they die or until all their friends die, essentially, right? So, but this one was very comfortable in letting you get to know the different characters on a kind of more personal level, and good dialogue, good writing. But it also kept you questioning as to where the danger was coming from and who it was coming from.
Sure.
You didn't really you kept going, oh, it's got to be that guy or it's got to be this guy. And you never really knew up until kind of the last 30-40 minutes. And the last 30-40 minutes, you forget all of the other stuff because the next 30-40 minutes are so wild and crazy that it's just like, and it was just really well paced and well timed. And so it follows this girl who shows up on a rainy, dark night in her car, gets out of her car and goes up to a house, and it's an Airbnb that she's rented.
It really starts with, it was a dark and stormy night.
It really does.
Nice.
And
okay.
So, and it's all pouring, but it's dark. She can't really see. The porch light's on, and she's going into the lockbox to try to get into the Airbnb that she rented. And she's looking at her phone at the keypad code, and she turns out she can't get in because there's no key. And so she goes back out to her car, and then the lights flip on, and she's like, what? Somebody's in there. And she can't get a hold of the manager or the owner of the place. So she goes and knocks on the door, and this guy, Bill Sarsgaard, answers the door and goes, yeah, can I help you? And she's like, yeah, I rented this place. He goes, so did I. I'm not from around here, but I rented it on this app. And she goes, well, I rented it on this app. And they're like, oh, what are we going to do? So she comes in to kind of figure it out. And she's very obviously nervous around him. And he's overly nice. And he's being, he's being very accommodating and almost to a weird point. And they kind of can't get a hold of anybody, so they decide to figure it out tomorrow. And he'll sleep on the couch, she'll sleep in the bedroom. And
what cologne are you wearing? It's called Bundy. Yeah.
And so then they get to start, they over a bottle of wine that he's very courteous and careful with. He goes, look, I didn't open it because I didn't want you to think I would spike anything, and you don't have to have any, but if you want to have some wine with me. And turns out she's there for a job interview. She's there because she's working for a director who is known for doing documentaries on music scenes. And they're in Detroit, and they're doing a Detroit music scene. Turns out he is part of one of these like art groups that does music stuff for a famous like Detroit art house jazz band group, right? And he was in the area looking for a new rental studio space. And she's like, no way. Well, that night she goes to bed, shuts the door, and wakes up, and her door is open, and he's making a bunch of like talking in his sleep, weird noises, calling her name and making weird noises. So she goes out there and like it's all scared and wakes him up, and then he's like, what? And he gets startled. He goes, dude, you scared me. Why did you wake me up? She goes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Did you open my door? And he goes, no, I didn't do that at all. And she goes, okay. She goes to bed, goes to sleep, wakes up the next morning, goes to her interview, and the lady's like, man, you should not be in that neighborhood. Like, why are you like, because as she came out of the house, she realized that that house is the only one that isn't an absolute devastation. The whole rest of the street, both sides of the street, they're all of the houses are like
Oh,
so
geez.
worn down, they're almost unlivable. And she's like, whoa, this is Detroit. Like, I didn't realize it because it was dark. And that when she told her what neighborhood she was in, that the lady that she did the interview with was like, you shouldn't be in that neighborhood at all. And so she comes back home, goes, it's fine. Comes back home, and as she's trying to go inside, some like from down the street, like this crazy homeless man is just running at her screaming. And she gets inside real quick and locks the door. And she's like, what is happening? And so she's trying to get a hold of the dude. Anyway, she gets locked in the basement. And she finds an open door in the basement, or not an open door, a trap door, like a rope. And it opens up this trap door, and she finds this creepy room with like with a bed in it that's all like covered in like blood stains, and then a camera and a bucket and a bloody handprint on the wall. And she starts to freak out, but the door to the attic or to the basement had shut behind her, and she's stuck. So then she goes back and she's like trying to find her way out, and she sees this other hallway past that room, and there's another door at the end of the hallway, and then there's a staircase that's all rock dug into the earth and goes down. Well, turns out there's a lot going on in this house. I'm not going to do any more spoilers.
Sounds like it.
But there's some creepy crawlies that live below, and that there is the owner of the house gets involved from his he's an actor in California played by Justin Long, who actually owns the property, but he's got himself into a cancel situation because he slept with his co-star and things are going sideways for him. So he's got to offlet a couple of properties. And so the properties that he's trying to offlet is one of them in Michigan. And so he shows up and finds all this chaos going on inside of his house and gets involved in it. And then it kind of does a flashback scene as to what is actually going on in the house. And it's completely, it was a really great movie, but super creepy, super weird. Once you get down below that staircase, the rest of the story is just wild, but highly recommend. And since it's newer, it's 2022, I kind of don't want to give the rest of it away. But it is definitely worth a watch for any horror fan out there. I highly recommend it. It was one of the better storyline, because most of them are pretty stale. Most horror movies for me are pretty much like formulaic. Oh, it's haunted house. Oh, it's exorcism. Oh, it's and so it's really hard for them to come up with kind of newer, more unique material. And this one was really well done. It kind of fell in the same kind of tone as, with a little bit more kind of classic gore and weird, creepy monster stuff, but in the tone of what is the guy who did the movie Nope, and he did Key and Peele,
Jordan
Peele.
Yeah,
it had a very Jordan Peele feel to it, as far as like the pacing and the filming and all of that. So it really had that feel to it, but with a little bit more kind of edge and gore than his movies do, which I actually enjoy his movies as well.
I was trying to find some notes. I did a show for a little while. I might pick it back up, called Movie Leftovers. And the idea is that we watch a movie, and then you have to like rewrite the script or make tweaks to it and present your version of the film, whether it be like a sequel, a prequel, a redo, or like a prestige TV series or something like that. And anybody you want, like for a cast and stuff like that. So for example, like for The Fifth Element, main character that becomes the priest, I would have had Danny Houston. The Apprentice, I would have had Elijah Wood. The main bad guy, I would have cast Woody Harrelson. the perfect being, I would put Elizabeth Olsen in there. Leader of the alien beings, Jada Pinkett Smith. And then Protector Guardian, whatever guy, Chris Evans. Like you remix stuff. Well, I did one on the Mighty Ducks, but I turned it into a horror movie where like Gordon Bombay is like sentenced to go out and like spend his community service time doing the hockey thing, and he gets there and like it starts to unravel why he's such an asshole, because both his kids died and his wife killed him and she's in prison and she's just a psycho. And so he meets the, what's the kid's name?
We watch this all the time.
Charlie Conway, right? Charlie Conway's mom, like starts to get to know her or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then it like just starts to unravel where like she is his ex-wife who's in prison's best friend. And she's just trying to raise Charlie to be the perfect killer. And all the other parents are like mysteriously just not around the kids, who are always around Charlie and his mom. And I did it with Reyes, and he's just got his head in his hand the whole time. Like, how dare you destroy and defile? And I was like, I can't remember what I named the film. It was like something, The Bloody Ducklings, I think I called it. It was amazing. Like, yeah. So I was trying to write a horror script to fit it. It was mostly just a bite-sized show that you could find on Twitch, I think, still. But yeah, I don't do horror films, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
Good times.
This one in particular, by the way, I want to do a rewrite. If there was one movie I could rewrite like that, it would be The Last Jedi.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've seen it once, but it's burned so heavily into my brain because I hated it so much that I literally memorized the entire movie. And I know every single scene and what I would do to change it every single bit of the way, and probably be able to reconnect it into even the next following movie, Rise of Skywalker, and make it very, very easy transition. Yeah, but fix everything that got broken in there. But anyway, that's a whole nother.
That's a podcast in and of itself.
Yeah, it is.
What are your thoughts on Kathleen Kennedy? Go.
Yeah. That's basically it. Yeah. After that movie came out, my poor artists at the shop, because I'm the Star Wars guy, so everybody would want to know, well, what you think, right? And after the first probably 5 rantings that went on for an hour to 2 hours plus of why every single second I hated of that movie and what was wrong with it, anytime a client would ask, oh, so did you see the new Star Wars? Did you like it? Tell me what you think. The whole shop would just groan. Oh no, not again. Like, because they knew I was going to go off on it. I know.
One of the last times I was getting tattooed, someone brought up, I'm like, don't piss him off.
Yeah. So.
But so Barbarian, though, you would say for the horror film aficionado, it's how many sharks are we giving this one out of 10?
This one we'll give Barbarian 8.5 sharks, because it was good. It was really good. I was thoroughly impressed throughout the whole thing.
Nice.
And it ended well. The climax was great. Like, the whole thing was just. It was perfect in the fact that there wasn't anything in it that I felt like should have been done a different way, or I was like, well, there's that. But no, it was completely enjoyable all the way through.
Nice. What horror film are you watching for tonight's?
I don't know. Marathon. That's something I have to go explore. Our streaming services.
Do you consider the Alien series horror or sci-fi, or is it okay to be both?
More sci-fi.
Okay.
It's because it's more action and sci-fi than it is horror.
Yeah.
And I think the first one probably falls under horror, Alien.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
Anything past that is all mainly just sci-fi action. But I would say that the first Alien definitely falls at least marginally in the horror category for sure.
I was gonna say you could throw some classics in there and just do like a Halloween run for a week, or I mean, how many of those do they make? 10?
I think so, something like that. And that's actually my least favorite of the horror genre, is kind of the quintessential cut and dry slasher films, like
Mhm.
you know, Friday the 13th and Halloween and Jason
Right,
and
yeah.
Mike Myers, because it's kind of just so formulaic, and it's just the
Oh,
lurking
yeah.
bad guy who comes after him with the sharp object,
Right.
and and I have a hard time, like, there was a really good one that was a play on it, and I highly recommend this to everybody because it's a beautifully made movie, and it's called The Final Girl. Or Final Girls, I think. There's one that it isn't and one that it is, and basically it's the daughter of
Like, be
one
careful
of
with
the
that Google search.
right uh the daughter of one of the ladies who was in like an 80s classic slasher film. The mom dies in a car crash and she's raised by her aunt and uncle, and when she's a senior in high school, her friends who all live in this small town, one of them's like a super nerdy dude who works at the movie theater, and they do a marathon of that 2 or 3 group of slasher movies that her
Yeah.
mom was in the first one, right? And he wants her to come down for the showing of this. They're doing a marathon, right? And they're
Right.
rewatch of all of them down at the movie theater. And he goes, "It would be really cool since your mom was in it if you came down." Da 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 da. And so she agrees to do it reluctantly. Well, for whatever reason, there's a fire happens in the theater,
Mhm.
and everyone's panicking trying to get out, and they had to cut a hole in the screen to get to get out of the movie theater, like
Right.
their group, or their group of friends, which is like 5 or 6 of them, and they cut a hole in the screen and crawl through it, and then wake up in a field, and they're in the movie, and it's on loop. And
Nice.
they know they're there, and it's hilarious. It's like at a campground, and the campers are all, and it's got a bunch of funny actors, like the guy from Workaholics, Adam Levine or Devine or whatever his name is, and then a bunch of other really funny people in it, and it's hilarious and also just a really clever movie,
Nice.
and I highly recommend that one. That one's really fun. The other one that I did see last night, which was I kind of I know exactly which one I'm going to watch tonight, but the one I saw last night was The Day Shift, which was a Jamie Foxx vampire movie.
Yeah, I watched that
and
too.
It was okay. Like I gave it 6.5, 7. It was entertaining enough to be fun, but anything with Snoop Dogg in it's going to be fun, and a 90s
I was going
rap
to say
soundtrack.
I'd probably give it like 3 sharks just because of Snoop Dogg and the soundtrack. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but outside of that, like, it was kind of, there was nothing really special about like a vampire hunter movie other than kind of putting a Jamie Foxx spin on it.
Right.
That was basically it. So, but the one that I'm going to watch tonight, I just remembered, it's actually a Norwegian film. And it's strangely the highest selling Norwegian film of all time from what they are claiming. And it's called Viking Wolf.
Does it have our boy Mads Mikkelsen in it at all?
No, I don't think it does. But
should.
I don't know. Look it up. Viking Wolf.
Viking Wolf.
Yeah.
Right here on the Modern Relics. We're researching right now. The Viking Wolf.
It looks.
Movie. It doesn't know.
Yeah.
Viking Wolf. Horror thriller. Oh, yeah. Look at all these beautiful
Swedish or Norwegian people.
Norwegian CW looking actors.
Directed by Stig Svensson.
Yeah.
So yeah. So but it's dubbed, so I don't have to read anything, which is great.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's annoying.
Reading sucks.
But I was in the mood for a good werewolf movie, and this is it's Norwegian. Good werewolf movie, and from what I've gathered, that this is actually a pretty good one. And my favorite werewolf movie besides American Werewolf in London is Dog Soldiers, which was a Scottish film by the guy who did it was like an earlier movie by the guy who did The Descent, Neil Marshall. And it was one of his earlier movies. And it has the worst cover art of any werewolf movie I've ever seen. So I passed it up multiple times until I was recommended it. And it's incredible. The costuming, the werewolves in it are awesome, and it's a really fun movie. And so Dog Soldiers is really good too. But yeah, Viking Wolf for tonight. I will report on it next week. But
I had a recommendation for a movie called Primer, which
I've heard that's good.
I'm really interested. It's very low budget. Interested in checking that out. So if I get to it this week, I will definitely let you know, as well as all of you. Modern Relics Podcast at gmail.com is where you can drop us a line. Let us know what you think about BlackRock's earnings under. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, dude. Congratulations on willing yourself through 30 straight days of horror films. I couldn't do it. You do this every year?
Yeah, I have for probably about 10 years now.
Damn.
So it culminates on the night before Halloween. I always watch The Crow because that happens on what is known as Devil's Night, and it's the night before Halloween. So traditionally, I just watch it every year.
It's also our buddy Reyes' birthday, Devil's Night.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. That's factually correct.
All right. So yeah, and then I watch a couple of things. Like I watch Trick or Treat on Halloween Day, typically. But outside of that, I do the same thing in December. I do the same thing for Christmas movies too. I'm a holiday guy, so but we have a heavy tradition of watching a string of Christmas films that culminate in It's a Wonderful Life. There's my a big one,
right?
My George Bailey tattoo.
I am particular about my Christmas movies. I like the claymation Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer one with Burl Ives as the snowman. Herbie doesn't like to make toys. He wants to be a dentist, Yeah, that's like pinnacle stuff. And I think it's because it was just on network television around the season every year on ABC, which was one of 2 or 3 channels we could get on the rabbit ears. Yep. I love it. Yeah. I have a DVD of it somewhere.
I do. I've got the whole box set here. So yeah.
Yeah. When eggnog hits the shelves, like Christmas is here. I don't give a shit. I don't care if Thanksgiving hasn't happened yet. It's Christmas season for me. But yeah. Halloween, I don't know. And last year I was disappointed. It was my first year here. I got way too much candy. I even got peanut-free candy just in case. I couldn't give that shit away, dude. There was like 3 dudes, like full-grown dudes, showed up in like scary clown outfits or whatever. And I can see everybody coming on the security camera or whatever. And I just opened the door and I'm looking at them. And they have backpacks on, and I'm like, shouldn't you boys be at like a party or something? And they all hang their heads. Yeah, probably. It's like, all right, well, here's your Reese's cups.
You weren't even scolding them for the right reasons. You weren't like, you're too old to trick or treat. You're like, bro, go to a party.
Shouldn't you be somewhere?
This is lame.
Yeah, what are you doing? You're still collecting candy? Yeah. We just kind of like shuffled away, like all frazzled. The best part is I saw a bunch of kids walking up the sidewalk, and they stopped and they looked at the house, and I had the lights on the porch to like the universal invite sign, Yeah. And they were all just kind of like looking at it, and like one's nudges the other one forward and kind of looks back, and they're like, nah, fuck that place. And they left, dude. They didn't even come up the driveway. I was like, this is hilarious. Because I didn't decorate anything. I don't give a shit that hard.
Yeah, that's not your game.
Like, I'll decorate the inside of my house for me. But yeah, I thought that was hilarious. I'm like, damn it. There was going to be like my 3rd customers. I had like a couple of parents pushing strollers that did the whole trick or treat thing. And then I had like 10 pounds of candy. So I gave it mostly to one of my neighbors with kids. And I was just like, yeah, your kids are going to love this. He's like, it's like, yeah, it's awesome. Because I was just going to sugar them up and send them back home. So yeah.
It's different for us now.
Yeah.
Because the kids aren't like, my kids are 17 and 14, and so
Yeah. Yeah,
it
what do
used
you
to be
do
we
with miniature adults for children?
I don't know. I think last year they went to a dance or something like that at the Skate Plaza or something. I don't know. And then Kate hangs out with her friends, and Oliver, I don't know. Oliver still kind of has like the want,
Hmm.
but also kind of being pulled in friend direction now too. So, but like we're not carving pumpkins anymore because I hated that anyway because it was so much work that I was the one who ended up doing it all.
Right.
And you know, all of the other things like we'll decorate the house, and then we hand out candy to the kids who come
Right.
trick or treating, and that's fine.
Well, you live in an environment where you could go pick a pumpkin if you wanted.
Yeah,
Like,
true.
there are no pumpkins in the desert, dude. I would have to like go to the store and it's probably get this dilapidated little thing, and I'm like, I don't care at all. It's just gonna bring in
cactuses.
No, man, we could. We decorate them with Christmas ornaments
Desert
and stuff.
pumpkins.
Yeah, we definitely do. But no, like if I brought a pumpkin here, the pigeons that already poop all over the place because I have a pool, so they're like, party. They would just eat the pumpkin. That's all that would happen. And so I don't know. I'm just like, whatever. I'll put up a sign or something.
Hey, before we leave, I see that you have new art behind you.
Yeah, we're adding to it.
That's awesome.
We've added.
Those
we've
lights
changed.
are rad too.
Yeah, thank you. We changed the light.
Yeah.
I have one big light source, and it's right where the sun sets, and it's like the surface of the sun entering the room. So I have a big shade on that, and then I also have, in addition to my central AC, like an air conditioner here to cool it off. Because what you guys don't see is I have a wall of electronics, like big computers and stuff. They all generate heat, and so working in this office and stuff is miserable. But I'm here all the time. So I'm like, I want to make this environment a fun place to be. So got some new lights, got a few more displays, added some cool nature scenes, and then I'm trying to figure out how I can get a couple of my pieces of art blazoned on these things so I can use them for like stocking stuffers or something, right? But yeah, dude, I got some cool ones. Got a few more Pulp Fiction posters coming. I got some really awesome cherry blossom ones that are, I think you saw on my Instagram maybe. But yeah, dude, a couple more. And then the boys are coming down this week on Thursday. The Apostles will be here. And then my buddy Dan. And I each got them a display too. So I'm pretty excited.
Reyes is going to be in town?
No, another friend adjacent to the Apostle group. Yeah, he will try to come down though on New Year's, I guess, which is exciting. So cool. Yeah, get to catch up with him a little bit. So more to come. But yeah, if you're catching us on YouTube, you'll have seen this in the backdrop the whole time. If you're listening to us wherever you get your podcasts, you just have to take my word for it. The office setup is getting there. It's getting better.
Looks good.
Nice.
Solid.
All right, brother. Anything else this week?
All right, man.
Good to go?
Nope. I set up a pot roast in the crock pot.
Nice.
So I'm not stressed about making dinner. It's already pretty much done.
The time is on my side.
Yep. So now I'll probably just go harass people on the internet now.
I love it. All right. Well, we will call it here. We'll see you guys again next week, and take it easy.